everybody. I'm very glad to be here and to be the keynote of this very interesting conference that you're going to have here today and tomorrow. I'm going to talk a bit about Swedish mining, what's happening in Sweden right now in the mining sector. And I also thought that I leave some room for questions, if you have any further questions to me, so that we have time to have a dialogue. And as said, we are the association for the Swedish mining, mineral and metal producing sector. We have a separate organization for the steel sector in Sweden, so we cover everything that is not steel, actually. Let's see here. Is this working? Is it the green one? Yeah. And this was already said that we represent around 60 companies with around 14,000 employees that are engaged in mining technology, exploration, and mining itself. And just to give you a snapshot over our membership, I'll see if this works. Should I tell you that to shift picture? It is not working. Yes, okay. Sorry for that. This is the membership of Svemin. We have all the active mining companies in Sweden, and I'm sure you recognize companies like LKAB and Boliden, which are the big ones. But we have also the smaller mining companies in Sweden. And Lundin Mining, for example, which owns Zinkgruvan, is also one of our members, of course. And we have all the large limestone producers in Sweden. We also have many of the companies that are exploring in Sweden today. And I think actually there might be one more addition that I saw is here today that I haven't had the time to add to the picture, and that is the Swedish subsidiary of Mawson Gold that also is a member of Svemin. So I'm sure you recognize several of these companies that are exploring in Sweden and developing mines in Sweden here. And our ambition, if there are companies in the room that would be interested to join, is to have all the companies that seriously are exploring in Sweden in our membership, because we work for both today's mines and the future mines of Sweden. And we are also very glad that we have a strong anchor in the mining cluster in Sweden. I'm sure you're all aware that we have the brands like Sandvik and Epiroc that are Swedish companies, and actually together holds around 70% of the world market for underground equipment. So this is a very strong mining cluster in Sweden, where we also work quite closely together, especially in research and innovation. So many of the Swedish active mines are really test beds for the future technology of Epiroc, Sandvik, ABB, and the other big technology providers. And I think this creates a very strong mining environment in Sweden. And of course, we have a long history of mining. Today, Sweden has 13 mines that are active, and I guess you could say only 13 mines. But we are glad at least that we got one new addition last year, a small gold mine, Botnia Exploration, opened this year actually. And we hope to see more mines opening in Sweden in the coming years. This opening of Fäbodtjärn in Botnia Exploration was actually the first mine to open in more than 10 years in Sweden. So this was really a milestone that we actually saw this happening. But we have more mines that are in the process of both permitting, but also to finance fully permitted mines in order to open moving ahead. But as I said, Sweden is already actually, even if we are not big in the global perspective, we are not big compared to Australia or Canada. But if you look at the European perspective, we are the #1 mining nation for metal and mineral mining in Europe. And we produce substantial shares already of iron ore and the base metals that are produced within Europe. So together with Finland, we are a quite strong Nordic mining cluster, really up here. And as you can see, for example, iron ore, Sweden produces more than 90% of all the iron ore that is produced within Europe. But anyhow, Europe needs to import around 70% or more of the iron ore that Europe needs for its steel making. So this is really the situation today. And we have a long history, as was said here. I'm sorry, this is partly in Swedish, but in the beginning, the year 1900, Sweden had around 250 mines that were active in Sweden. And now we have 13, as I said earlier. But if you look at the production, which is on the other graph, you can see how that has increased a lot. So today we have highly productive mines and much larger mines than we used to have in history. So Sweden has had a development within mining for a long time, but we have always had the mines here. It's not like many other jurisdictions in Europe that have had mines in the past and now are trying to restart a mining sector with the Critical Raw Material Act and the things that are happening, but don't have the history. So we really have the history here in Sweden. And also, the mining sector, I wouldn't say it's the biggest sector of the Swedish economy, because we have a very diversified economy in Sweden, but it is a substantial share of the Swedish economy. So the mining sector itself is around 1% of the GDP, and if you look at the more expanded mining cluster, where I include Epiroc, Sandvik, and those manufacturing companies, and also part of the metal making in Sweden, it is a larger share, around 3% of the GDP and 8% of the export. So we are a sector in Sweden that actually contributes quite substantially to the Swedish economy. And we also know that we have the possibility to contribute more in the future, both to expand the already existing mines, where there is a lot of exploration ongoing, and we know that there are projects that might lead to further development of those mines. But we also see that the bedrock here in Sweden and in the Nordic is very, very interesting. This quote is from a report that was made by the Nordic Innovation. The geological surveys together did this study, and they concluded actually that the Nordic bedrock can be compared to the best bedrocks in Canada, US, Brazil, and Australia, and that we have the potential for many of the critical raw materials that EU has defined in the Critical Raw Material Act. And we know that in Sweden we also have many of these materials that we could use for the future. So the potential is definitely there, as I said. And this is a more zooming in picture on Sweden, and where we actually see we have the potential in Sweden for critical raw materials. And this is just what we know today. I would underline that there might be more findings actually that we don't see, that we don't know about today. So I will talk a little about the challenges as well, moving on, with all actually trying to realize all these potentials. Let's see. Yeah, and this was just a couple of projects, and there are more projects, of course, but that I listed that are that actually have strategic raw materials for the European Critical Raw Material Act that are that we see exploration right now, and I'm sure you will hear much more about specific projects here today. And we see also that we have an increased interest for exploration in Sweden today. The yellow line is the number of total valid exploration licenses in Sweden, and the blue line is the number of new applications each year. And as you can see, we had a sort of well, what do you call it? High numbers in the 2008, 9, 10, but then it has become much lower. But now we see a slight increase again in the interest for exploring in Sweden, and we also see that there are more applications coming in. I don't think the increase will be as big this year, because there was a lot. We had these COVID extensions of the exploration licenses, so I think that that came in last year, most of the prolongations. But we will see still an increase in the total number, is my prediction at least, even for 2024. So there is an interest for exploring in Sweden again. So what is happening in Sweden right now? I realize I forgot one bullet here, so I will remember to talk about uranium mining in Sweden as well. But what we see right now in the Swedish context is, of course, that Sweden is part of the European Union. We also are under the Critical Raw Material Act, and that will lead to a lot of new things here in Sweden as well. Sweden has to actually put up a sort of a single point of contact for the applications for permitting. They will need to adhere to the timelines that has been introduced under the Critical Raw Material Act, which is 27 months for the mining projects. But we also see there is a lot of things happening on the Swedish side. The government today is very ambitious and want to make simplifications in the permitting procedures. We have already it feels like this is not working really. Like that they are actually doing simplifications today. What I call here Lex Laver is actually the clarification that you can get a mining concession without having an HR 2000 permit already, which entered into force the 1st of July this year. We have also seen how they have done simplifications for the exploration companies when it comes to off-road driving, deep drilling, etc. And we know that there are more things in the pipeline. We have a public investigation that is going to propose more simplifications in December this year, and our hope from the Swedish Mining Association, and that we also constantly tell our politicians in the dialogue we have, is that this needs to be implemented very fast. What we hear is that the suggestions will be very good, and we hope that actually this government that has 2 more years in office could do changes that would enter into force before they leave office to maybe a new government. So this is really something that we from the Mining Association is working on a daily basis. We also know that we're going to have a new mineral strategy for Sweden. The last one was from 2013, and to be honest, that hasn't been followed up so much. And I think this government that has more ambition, they want to make this mineral strategy something where you actually have targets for the sector moving forward. So hopefully this is going to also make some change in the sentiment in the Swedish mining cluster. So hopefully this together will make a positive outcome for Sweden. And we also know, I know that I get some questions from some of our member companies, but also I know that there is an interest from investor side when it comes to uranium. Today, Sweden has a ban on exploring and mining for uranium, but with the current government that is very much pro-nuclear and that they want to see more nuclear in Sweden, they have the ambition to actually take that ban out and make it possible to both explore and mine for uranium in Sweden moving ahead. And actually, I had hoped that the proposal would have come already, but I know that they are also trying to time this with other changes in the Nuclear Act, for example, under which the nuclear part is falling. So our hope is that this will materialize quite soon, and that we will see what the Swedish government wants to do with this ban. But I would say that the direction is very clear. They will lift the ban on exploration and mining But there are maybe some details that you need to sort out on exactly how to do this from a legislative way. So this is what we see in the pipeline right now. We also have other very important suggestions or propositions that will come from the government in the coming year here. We know that we will have an infrastructure bill coming. I think it's actually already in October that we will see that. And of course, infrastructure to get the products out is extremely important. I'm sure that you all have heard about the problems that has been in the north of Sweden around the Malmbanan, the railway that both Kaunis Iron and LKAB is using to get their products out. And our hope is that there will be actually investments that are announced into these specific parts of Sweden. Research and innovation is another bill that we are expecting right now. And we hope also that that will actually have a more targeted approach where you actually give more money to the research and innovation in the mining and mineral sector. And we are also, of course, closely following the energy sector, because if you don't have the energy, it's very hard to get your products up and out as well. So in Sweden, there is a lot of things happening. And I'm also sure that you know about the Critical Raw Material Act. The strategic projects under there will have this faster timelines. But as I understood it, what I heard just last week here is that the European Union was, but they were surprised by all the applications they got. I think they got 170 applications for strategic projects, and they had expected around 50. So the first ambition was to have that ready and actually to point to which projects would be nominated as strategic in the end of this year. But as I understand it, it's delayed until March somewhere next year. And I think 77 of these 170 projects were actually mining projects. And I know that there were some Swedish projects as well that has applied, and some Finnish as well for strategic projects. So this is a little bit about what is happening in Sweden. And of course, I just wanted to mention also from the Swedish mining sector and the Swedish mining cluster, to actually be able to mine sustainably is a very important key figure for us. To actually mine with as low impact as possible on the environment. A mine will never have zero impact on the environment, but we can do it with as low impact as possible when it comes to climate, biodiversity, this so work a lot on health and safety and other issues as well. So sustainability is always a very important focus for the Swedish mining sector, and where we also work a lot in the research and innovation area. So I think we have a lot to offer when it comes to this. So just to sum up, I would say that Sweden is a front runner in sustainable mining. We have already highly productive mines that are very productive, modern, and with a high degree of automation. We also know that we have substantial potential for the future that we hope to be able to develop, both for the materials we already mine, but also for the critical raw materials that Europe needs and the world needs moving ahead. And we have the strong collaboration with the technology cluster, with Epiroc, Sandvik, ABB, and the other companies that are active here in Sweden. So Sweden is a good jurisdiction for mining for the future. So I think I stop with that and leave the room if there are any questions for me around anything that you think that I might have forgot to talk about, or if there is anything I said that you would like to hear more about.
So maybe I can start and kick off. At the end of the room, I have a colleague, Sunér. So if you have any question, you can just raise your hand and then you will get a mic. But let me just start with one question. You showed a picture of a turnaround in applications and grants of applications, as it were. Just out of curiosity, do you have any data on whom they are? And what I'm looking for, would that be the usual suspects, the majors, like the Bolidens, or is it entrepreneurs or wildcats, or is it junior companies, if you...
I would say it's a lot of junior companies, actually. The large, at least LKAB and Zinkgruvan, they are mainly exploring in their very near mine exploration. Boliden is more active in new places, but I think that the majority would be junior companies when it comes to the numbers of applications. But I have to admit, that's a good question. I look into that, so I have a good answer next time you ask me.
And also I have to expose my ignorance here. Lex Laver, as you said, that will make it easier for permitting. Would we have a time frame when that will be implicated? Or is it actually working now, so anyone here would be able to use Lex Laver?
Yes, it's already implemented from the 1st of July this year. And I mean, I'm sure most people here know about the procedures. I mean, after you have your exploration licenses for up to 15 years, you have to apply for a mining concession. And it's in that phase where that becomes important, because we have several projects that has been halted here in Sweden due to the fact that the mining inspectorate had made the judgment that if you affect a Nature 2000 area, which is sort of a nature conservation area, you had to have a permit for that before you could get your mining concession. So it became sort of a catch-22, because you don't have enough information on the actual layout of your mining operations at that stage. So now it's said that that will come after in the environmental permitting procedure instead. So it's not that you don't need to have it, but you will be able to get it afterwards, after you have your mining concession, and so has secured your access to the resource.
So in summary, it's more logical. It's also a quicker process, and it will then, in a way, lower the financial risk for anyone who applies. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, it would.
And also you mentioned a new mining strategy, and yet again I apologize, I have to expose my ignorance here, but it sounded like, could you just remind me, this is the new, and the old one was from when?
2013.
Okay, all right.
And I think what we can hope for, I mean, we had a roundtable with the government where many of Svemin members also joined in March already, and they kicked this off, but still it hasn't materialized. And I think now the government, they are having many strategies that they are going to produce. There is also one overarching industrial strategy, and I think what they will target in this mineral strategy will be things that are very typical or specifically important for the mining sector or the mineral sector. So I think that they are waiting until they have finalized the other strategy until they will put forward the mineral strategy. But my hope is that we will see some sort of targets, like if you look at the Australian or the Canadian mineral strategies, where they actually, from the politicians' side, say that we want to see more mines, we want to see an expansion, we want to see a development of this sector in our country. So, and I think that is very important political signals, because I would say since the last mineral strategy, the sentiment from the policy side has been very much the opposite, that the mining sector has been on the decline. But so I think it's important for the politicians to actually manifest that they want to see more mines in Sweden. And I think we have that promise from our politicians that are very active in doing things that will make it easier to mine in Sweden in the future.
And would you be bold enough to have a timeline and guessing on when this will be, let's say, a law or set in stone? As you said, I mean, the government is busy with a lot of things.
I think it will be around well, maybe early next year is my
Okay.
guess. I don't think they will manage to do it before Christmas. So I would say January, hopefully.
But that's pretty quick in this industry, I would say.
Yeah, it is. So,
Yes.
but I also feel a bit. We know what kind of government we have today, and that they are very positive towards mining. But we don't know really what a government would look like in 2 years in Sweden. So I think it's important that they actually get things done during this their term in office, because we have seen how much the politicians actually matter for the mining industry.
And I don't think that Sweden is in any way unique there. Looking out if there are any questions. Yep, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Very informative presentation. Curious, any comments on potential changes to the municipal veto right moving forward?
Yeah, you mean for uranium mining specifically? I think that is one of the things that is making this take a little bit longer time, because they are thinking around how they will handle the municipality veto for uranium mining. Or actually, it's a veto against nuclear activities. So it's not specifically uranium mining. It's more if you have a nuclear power plant, of course, that also kicks in. So I think that is the big discussion within the government right now, how to handle the municipality veto. And that's not only in the Minerals Act, that's also in the Nuclear Act. So that's why it takes some more time. I think that to put uranium back to be a concession mineral, that's the easy part, and that for sure they will do. So it will be possible to explore and also mine in the future. So I think the tricky bit is around the veto that they are thinking about. I don't dare to guess on where that will end. But of course, from Svemin perspective, we would like to see that. I mean, this kind of vetoing is not very good when it comes to things that are important for the society in general. We see what's happening in Sweden when it comes to the veto on wind power, for example. That is also quite damaging for the sector. So hopefully they will do something about this.
I think we had a question over there, yes. So.
Thank you. Christopher Eccleston from Hallgarten and Company. Has there been uranium mining in Sweden in the past? And is the political opposition still opposed to uranium? So if there is a change of government, it might be approved in the short term and then overturned in the medium term. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that is actually, yes, there has been uranium mining in history in Sweden. And I think that is part of the problem, actually. That was in the 1960s. So that was a long time ago. And that has not been handled very well when it comes to reclamation and actually restoring the grounds. So I think that is part of the problem. Maybe not all of you know, but I mean, Sweden has for decades had a very complicated relationship to nuclear power. We had the referendum in 1980, so it's been a lot of polarization around nuclear power, and that spills over on uranium mining as well. So I think we still have. I'm a bit afraid that this will stir up commotion from the political side. Hopefully, we will be able to find a common ground. The Green Party will always be in opposition of uranium mining. I'm quite sure about that. But I hope that the other parties that might be part of another governmental coalition would have a more moderate position. And my hope is that if there is a change that they can accept, that will be that there will be no changes moving ahead.
And while we're looking out for more questions there, I just like to get my head around Svemin as an organization here. Obviously, you're on top of the legislations, and I can see you as an interpreter of rules and regulations, not only to your members, but in general. But are you in any shape and form actively lobbying for the government or to the government and the parliament when it comes to rules and regulations and changing here?
That is sort of what we do.
Yeah.
No, I would
And
say
how does it work?
No, but of course, I mean, we are representing our members towards the Swedish policymakers, both in Sweden, but also in the European perspective, because Sweden is affected by everything that has happened on the European level. So we work through our organization Euromines, but also on our own towards the European legislation. And I think, I mean, we have quite a lot of dialogue with the policymakers on all levels. And that is really, as an organization, how you have to work. You need to have a dialogue with the ministers and the commissioners, but you also need to talk to their staff and also the non-political staff. So I guess that is how we do it. But if you look at Svemin and what we do, that is one part of what we do. The other things is also actually establishing networks with our membership, and also exchange of experiences. I mean, that is also a very important part to make that possible. And for an example, which I think is very interesting for people here, we have a quite active exploration committee in Svemin, and we actually have the chairman, Johannes from EMX here today. So he's the chairman of our exploration committee in Svemin. So, and I think that is also very much part of what we do, to actually talk to our members and to make our members talk to each other and exchange experiences on how to work in the Swedish context.
So if one summarizes here, then obviously if one would like to be a part of that network among all those illustrious companies, then they should seek out you during this day.
Yes, exactly. And you can also find the information on our webpage. And actually, we want to have junior exploration companies as our members, so the fee is very low to join if you're a junior company.
And one final question, if we don't have anyone from the floor, and that is, how do you fit in the cog of the EU? That there will be similar Svemin, but in Germany and stuff like that.
Well, as I said, actually, I mean, we are big. Svemin and Sweden is big if you look at the European scene. We have no counterpart really in Germany, not for metal mining. They look more at coal mining. I would say we have Finland, we have Spain, we have a little bit in Eastern Europe. So I think that if you look at the Svemin and the Swedish position in Euromines, for example, we are quite strong. Today we have also Swedish chairman of Euromines, Jan Moström, the CEO of LKAB. So I think the Swedish mining sector is quite important and influential on the European level if you want to talk mining. But of course, mining in the European context is quite unknown. We started to go to Brussels, that was more than 2 years ago, talking ahead of the Critical Raw Material Act. And actually, we got questions from people within the Commission looking at us and saying, mining in Sweden? I didn't know we had that. Or, you know, like, do you mine in Congo? So they didn't even know that we had active mines in Europe. So
Svemin is the way. If you're a non-European, then obviously Svemin would be the first stop.
If you're active in Sweden, because that's a prerequisite.
Yes, well, if you're active in mining, then you will be active in Sweden. If you're all right, so thank you very much. I think we should give a warm applause.